Shattering Glass Chapter 2. Glass? Rob's posse thought I was dumber than duck do, but Glass fooled them, not me. Simon wasn't what anybody thought he was. Lance Ansley. Clue me in later. We're going to be late, I said. Not a big deal. Rob strolled down the hall, unhurried. It is a big deal when Mrs. Parks gives a test. You know how she is. Starts the test when the bell rings, or don't start it at all. We've got a sub. So what? Parks is bound to have left instructions. The last bell rang as Rob spoke. I'll handle it. We rounded the corner to the English wing and headed to the end of the corridor. You two are late. The sub was a babe-luscious, but trying not to be. She wore her long hair pulled back and a scowl on her face. Rob stopped. Yes, ma'am. He flashed his smile and shape-shifted into his humble act. I'm really sorry. I know it's hard on a sub when you get jerks like the two of us. I resemble that remark, I muttered. We understand if you decide to write us up, Rob said. Prepared for attitude, the sub got sideswiped. She tucked the late slips into her skirt pocket. No harm done, I guess. What are your names? Rob Haynes, ma'am, and this is young Stewart. She checked her roll sheet, then chewed her bottom lip. I see Haynes, Rob, but I don't. I interrupted. Look for Thad. She rescanned. Young? That's an unusual nickname, isn't it? Groans drifted around the room. Too many had heard the story too many times. It's a long and boring story, I began. Believe him. An honor society drone drawled from the last row. Rob cut in. Young is really Thaddeus R. Stewart IV. His great granddad was Thad. His granddad was Junior. His dad is Trey. So he gave her his I'm as cute as a fuzzy little duckling smile. The family kept with Roman numerals, but Rob leaned in to whisper. Didn't want to call him Little Stewart. Bad for a guy's self image. Hence the young Stewart. The sub shook her head, grinning. Take your seats, please. You have a test to take. Mrs. Parks usually gives us 15 minutes to review before vocabulary tests, Rob said. Is that cool with you? The sub pulled wisps of hair toward her face. Sounds like a good idea. No problem. Rob sauntered down the aisle. I followed and eased into my seat. In 20 minutes, he had the sub off on a jag about her recommendations for college or some other bullshit, and there was no time for Mrs. Parks's marathon vocab test. As we left class, Todd Carter stopped Rob. Way cool. Glad to be of service, Rob said. Parks will crap hot coals when she hears the sub didn't give the test, I said. That babe won't be subbing here again. Not my problem, Rob said. Does an instruction manual come with being your friend? One minute you worry about Simon Glass's pen, and next you put a sub out of work. The sub did what I wanted. Game over. I won. And Glass? Rob grinned. That game's just beginning. I hate it when you do your mystery man bullshit. No, you don't. And I hate it when you do that too, I said. Rob grinned. Young? About the sub? Didn't you notice the honker-sized diamond on the babe's ring finger? Do you think she wants a career of substitute teaching? All my mind could think was, duh? And if she does, she's lousy at it. Rob turned to Mia Deacon as she strolled past. Mia, new haircut? Looking good. She smiled and her fingertips strayed to her bangs. Rob morphed back to our conversation. We saved the educational system and the babe a lot of time and trouble. If she ever remembers me, she'll thank me. Even when I allowed myself a fleeting suspicion that Rob was wrong, he made so much sense that I had to follow his lead. We all followed. He made it easy. Later, Rob and I pushed our orange plastic trays along the aluminum rails of the lunch line. Coop trailed behind. What is this stuff? Rob groaned. Hamster litter? Used hamster litter, I added. I think it's salad, Coop said. I'll eat it if you don't want it. You eat the trays, Coop. I picked up the jello, solid as a rock. I think they fill holes in the parking lot with this stuff. What's the main dish? Rob asked the square-bodied cafeteria worker. Lasagna. She gave Rob a "don't start with me" look. "What's in it?" I asked. "Wet paper towels, Elpo, and melted vinyl," Rob answered. "Yours has an added attraction," Big Block Body said, slapping a chunk of lasagna on Rob's plate. I spit on it. She didn't smile. "Here, Coop," Rob said. "It's yours." "What are you going to eat?" Coop asked. Rob waggled his eyebrows at the disgruntled woman. "My words." "Good choice," she shot back. "There's one that's not hot for you," I said. "Gotta be blind," he said. We moved down the line and grabbed our desserts. "What did you mean this morning when you said Lance had messed up?" I asked. "Dork baiting is amateur hour. What's the challenge making Glass look stupid? Lance didn't prove anything except he's desperate for attention." "I guess, but that's not real power. True power would be making the sheep like Simon." He paused and then grinned like he had just tasted something surprisingly good. "Want to test it? Make Glass Joe popular." "Yeah, right." Rob smiled, twining his way through a few tables. "Jen, save me a seat next to you during Eco, will you? Amos, how's your knee? You gonna be able to play Friday?" He knew names. He knew what mattered to each person he met. He scanned the cafeteria. In the corner sat Simon Glass alone at a table for 10, hunched over a brown paper sack, eating what looked like a bologna sandwich. "Watch and learn, good buddy." Rob cruised straight for Simon. "Hey, Glass, mind company?" Simon looked up, hunched further, and pulled his milk carton closer to his chest. No doubt he was full up on friendliness from the hot shots today. I stood, hesitating, next to Rob. Coop rolled up behind me. "Relax, Glass," Rob whispered. "Sit up straight, smile, and invite me to sit down." Simon bolted upright. "Sure, have a seat." As he spoke, half-chewed bread wads hung off his bottom lip. "Thanks, man." Rob gestured for us to sit. "Save a place for Bobster. He's still in line." He sat next to Simon. Rob couldn't have attracted more attention if he had set off firecrackers and danced naked on the tabletop. The place got almost quiet. I sat across the table. Coop looked confused as usual, but just dug into his lasagna. "This ain't bad," he announced. "She didn't really spit on it." "We rely on Coop," Rob told Simon, smiling. "He's our taste tester. If his pupils don't dilate, we know he's not poisoned." Simon eyed Rob, then looked long and hard at me, then at the oblivious Coop. "Glass, I think Lance was a real shit this morning," Rob said. Simon looked up, anticipating the sucker punch. "No shit. You were man enough to ignore him, like he was crap on your shoes." Simon blinked. "Young said the same thing, didn't you, Young?" Here I was being dragged into another Rob program. I noticed Rana Perry watching. "Yeah," I cleared my throat and shot Rob a look of disgust. "I thought you made him look like a jackass." "Course, that's not such a stretch for Lance." Simon took a bite of his sandwich. I was wrong. PBJ. "Young, you gonna eat your cake?" Coop was well into his feeding frenzy. I handed it over. "What do you want, Rob?" Simon's voice was a wheeze. Rob smiled and gave Simon the once-over. "There's more to Simon Glass than we know, isn't there?" Simon lifted his chin. His bland face showed glimmers of defiance. "Maybe." "That's good. It'll be easier." "What are you guys talking about?" Coop asked, reaching for my milk. I batted his hand away. Rob laughed and shoved his milk to Coop. Looking up, he waved. "Bobster, over here." Bobster nodded and started toward us. Catching sight of Simon Glass, he hesitated in mid-stride. Rob waved again. Bobster shook his head but continued. His foot hooked the chair rung to pull it out. "Hey, Rob," he nodded to us. "Coop, Young." He paused, lowered his voice. "Glass?" "We've got a deal to discuss with Glass, Bobster. I was just getting around to it." Simon wadded up his sandwich wrapper. He dragged on the last of his milk through the straw and pushed it in the bag. "I have to go now," he said. "Computer lab." "Sure. Talk to you later, Glass?" Simon brushed his nose with the back of his wrist. "I guess," he stammered. He waited a half minute, looking anxious. Why not? Most eyes in the lunchroom were locked on him. Sure, Rob, he said louder. We'll talk later. He crunched his lunch bag into a compact wad, dropped it squarely in the garbage, and pushed the swinging door. I saw him smooth his hair as the door swung back.